I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube, Joel Saint, joined by my buddy Patrick McCray, author of the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound. We're here to discuss episode 1227 of 1841 Parallel Time. John Carlin narrates this opening. I have a question for you. What did you think of Henry Kaplan's direction? Because he directs a lot of these episodes.
Uh, yeah, I think this episode gave him a little bit more to have fun with,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that. He got a good fight scene in, he got an almost death in. We thought it was a death. I think, he was a tough director. He was not apparently the nicest man when it came to them. I think Pennick has written about that in his comics, and I think Leela Swift was a little gentler on them. But television directing, I think, is a very tough thing to judge because they have so little time and so much of it is technical. It's not directing, kind of, if you were to look at the strata of directing, the different layers, that the least involved with the actors is going to be television directing, especially with the soap opera, because they're just going so fast. They've got so many technical things to worry about. It's all about the lighting and, the cameras and getting the actors to their marks and all of that. Second is movie directing, where maybe the director gets to interact with you a little bit. On some shoots, they have the luxury of the director taking them off and doing rehearsal, sometimes for a week or two, and that's really she. And then you get stage directing, which is often very technical, but nevertheless you're spending, oh gosh, at least on an amateur level, 2 or 3 hours a day, 5-6 days a week, for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks with the actors. And so, and you're also dealing with technical stuff, but it's the opposite. The technical people have very little time to get their stuff done, and you've already worked with the actors a lot. I don't know if that answers your question. What did you see that inspired that question?
I see a lot of. I wasn't there, so I can only react to the actors' performances. They're very much, even with their words, they're very thorough, and I think where Henry Kaplan deserves at least some credit for these episodes is the way he shoots these episodes very thoroughly. I don't know how many takes they had, and again, we haven't had the take counter for a long time in Dark Shadows by the time we get to this arc,
Yeah.
but he seems like a guy who, like, less takes is more.
Well,
Again, that's just my opinion.
Jewel, you're quite right. On Dark Shadows, do you know how much it cost for them to stop the camera and start taping again?
No.
Um, I think it cost around the. I think it was like about 200 grand. Certainly in modern dollars, it was unbelievably expensive. It was just horrendously expensive, and they had one videotape recorder, just one, and it had to be at the news right after the show. So they really, not only did it cost them a lot of money, but they had to hustle that thing physically across town to get it to the news. So yeah, that's why, on Dark Shadows you see so many bloopers, and occasionally you have them where the actors are as Louis Edmonds, the infamous incestors line. I think he did that on purpose. I think he had fun with it. I either that or he is, which could also be true, the smoothest cat in town. Why can't it be both? But I have very, very little patience with people who revel in the bloopers.
Yeah.
My heart goes out to the actors
Yeah.
because of how much they're having to do and know. I mean, even stuff that's kind of funny, like the fly that keeps bothering Reverend Trask. Well, yeah, it's ironic. It's more interesting to me to just imagine that it's part of the story, and that as Reverend Trask is trying to conduct this ritual, this fly keeps bothering him. That's funnier than Jerry Lacey trying to get through a scene and a fly landing on him. But I really there's this German word. It's a concept only the Germans could have, called Schadenfreude. You ever heard that, Schadenfreude?
No.
It means taking pleasure in the pain of others, taking pleasure in the misery of others. And I know I sound like a real spoil sport because people love the bloopers and so on. And I'm gonna sound real hoity-toity when I say this, so who cares? I love the actors more.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't take them seriously, but the bloopers, but I don't even really see them. I don't really pay attention to them. I know that's far away from what you were talking about, but yeah, if this whole thing was one take, I mean, that's where they get the phrase live on tape.
Yeah.
Because they really could not stop. And the teleprompter was a thing for a lot of them. But it couldn't be for everyone. Not everyone had contact lenses. Most of them wore glasses. So, I mean, have you as an adult tried to memorize lines?
Yeah, not as an adult now.
It's it's not easy. And believe it or not, it's still the easiest thing in acting compared to the other challenges in acting. Learning lines. I mean, a good director I know, a guy named Bruce Boren, used to say a rock could memorize. That's the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, but it's still bloody hard. And look at Jonathan Frid, who's dyslexic, having to learn 900 episodes worth of lines.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's heroes.
They do a really good job, and I think that's where I give credit to Henry Kaplan, because he seemed like a director who's like, okay, we're going to do this in maybe one take and one take alone, and he seemed to be somebody who did a good job at doing this. I love how he shoots these episodes.
He would not have been with Dark Shadows, much less other shows, for 5 years,
right?
If he were not really good at what he did.
Yeah.
And he and Leela were just machines. And one thing I'll point out, it wasn't just a scene done in one take. It was an episode done in one take.
Yeah. And
wow.
I love how Christopher Pennock and Jen Bennett, Flora Collins, and Gabriel are at the gazebo, and he's got the knife behind his back. So it's like, oh my God, is he going to stab her? And he actually fights off from stabber. How great of an actor is the late great Christopher Pennock? Amazing, right?
Pennock works in so many adjustments. Going from one state to another state, back and forth and back and forth, and in just that scene alone, that he deserves some kind of prize.
Yeah. We also get the return of David Selby in this episode.
Yes, we do.
He's babysitting Gabriel in the room, and I like how he picks up right where he left off. He's interrogating Gabriel of what happened in that room. He wants to get answers about the room. And I got it. If there's a hint that the room has a lot of power, if you want hints that the room has power beyond the door, sorry for jambling my words there, but beyond the door, take a look at Gabriel's performance here, or Christopher Pennock's performance as Gabriel here, where he's sort of going back and forth. It lets you know the room has a lot of control.
It does. And some of that you get to see sort of in the opposite, just the amount of relief that Gabriel's talking about, thinking, God, I thought I'd never have to come back to this house.
Yeah.
Which is the first sensible thing I have ever heard a Collins say.
Yeah.
All I can imagine is that Jameson Collins' primary time must have had some very powerful mojo going, or just the supernatural stuff burned itself out for a while after 1897, the widows notwithstanding, so that he would stay in the house, and so he'd raise his kids in the house, and so that Liz would stay in the house. Liz is guilt-ridden and mentally unhinged, but she's not crazy, and she's not, she can go into her isolation a lot of places. Doesn't have to be there, although I guess she's guarding the body, so she thinks.
Well, I think a lot of her isolation was either her room, because I get the sense that she snuck out the house a lot as a kid.
Oh yeah, but where are you gonna go? Well, until you get a boyfriend with a flivver, and you're gonna be out all night.
Yeah.
Where are you gonna go? I mean, Collinwood's like 10 miles or so, I imagine, from the rest of the town.
Yeah.
On foot, that's going to be all night. And who knows how far Collinwood proper is from the entrance to the estate.
Yeah. I get this sense that maybe Liz is somebody who maybe hung out at the gazebo a lot, or on top of Widow's Hill herself.
Oh, I think she probably was out there with Semaphore. I mean, how on earth did she meet Paul Stoddard? I'm sure Jameson was thrilled. How did she meet this guy? And but I assume college. I assume Liz probably was sent away to boarding school, and yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see, actually, I always pictured her meeting Paul Stoddard in the Blue Whale, of all places, where she's trying to light her own cigarette and he lights it for her, or vice versa.
Yeah.
I could see something like that.
Or she's got like a big plug of Red Man, and she's looking for a spittoon, and she can't find one, and he brings his chamber pot or something and says, "Milady," and he spits into it and looks into his eyes. I think that if it had been in the South,
Yeah. What did you think of Gabriel going in and out of his character, or sorry, Christopher Pennant going in and out of the emotion of the character, where he's fine one minute, he's not the next. It's the possession storyline in 1841 parallel time is really underrated with each character.
It's very satisfying.
Yeah.
It's a very, very, very satisfying sequence. I think.
Yeah. We get Kendrick coming back in the house. And really, we didn't get Bramwell in the prior episode, so we're getting a double dose of Kendrick here. And why not? John Carlin's your narrator, so
this is certainly one of the loudest, angriest plot lines Dark Shadows had. It is. We've had all we can stands, and it can't stands no more. You just imagine you get Morgan, Bromwell, and Kendrick all ticked off in a room together in a scene at the same time. There would have been paintings falling off the wall and stuff like that. Just the shouting would have been so intense. It's a very, I don't know if it's the most masculine storyline they had, but it's right up there just in terms of featuring men. I haven't watched a lot of other soap operas, but I think of them as stories that are female dominated, to appeal to the audience that's being written for. And Dark Shadows is a show, certainly begins, I think, as female dominated. You got Liz and Carolyn and Vicky as your main characters, and everything kind of, pinwheeling around them. And by this point, it seems pretty even between the genders, but the guys are really carrying a lot of the show. I mean, I think maybe as much as or more than we've seen since 1897.
Yeah, I agree with you here with this arc. It's you don't again because Joan Bennett's lines in this are more of a coming from a motherly concern, and she's not in a ton of these episodes. It's mainly you see the men like obviously Keith Prentice, David Selby, John Carlin, again, and Jonathan Frid's in there, and I think the person who's in the least episodes, I want to say, is Lewis Edmonds. I could be wrong.
Well, you mean overall in the series? Or...
Well, no, in this arc, I think.
Oh, sure, yeah, he's a ghost. I mean, he floats in every 4 or 5 episodes and makes a pronouncement, and then floats out.
Yeah, his entrance in this arc is really, really good. It's underrated as hell as a ghost. One of the most creepiest ones, considering how it's done. We've talked about that with James Forsythe, which is which is still currently Keith Prentice, even in this episode, even though you don't see Morgan Collins. There is an interesting moment in this episode here where Quentin says about going into town and going to the hotel to talk to Kendrick, but we never see the scene. I wondered, do you know why?
They didn't write it.
Oh wow.
I mean, I mean that's why they didn't have it. I mean, because also the material is covered, later. And in theater, I feel like I'm in professor mode here. But that's okay. That's called in a play. That's called buried action, and that's where certain bits of action take place off stage, and you hear reports of it later. As one of these things where I talk about Dark Shadows is theater, in many senses, but it's theater rather than film or television, in that film and television are generally about action, and theater is about consequences. And Dark Shadows is very much about consequences. But maybe that could be said for all soap operas. Again, the times I've tried to watch them, except for the indescribably fabulous Sammy on Days of Our Lives, I've been bored out of my mind. So I appreciate the storytelling, but if you want a real lesson in the exactitude of storytelling in soap operas, watch one without vampires.
Yeah. Well, 1841 is your story you need to watch, really. If you want to watch something that's without a vampire, this arc here is your...
Yeah, but you got a haunted room.
Yeah, but though you have a haunted room, I still say that the characters overall still keep a certain, like, look at Kendrick and Melanie. There's a love angle going there, and then you have Daphne and Bramwell's marriage. So there's other things going on that pique your interest in this arc. It's not just solely the room. Yeah, the room's the main plot.
Oh,
don't get me wrong.
Sure. What I'm saying is that you've got the supernatural something extra.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm all for having something a little extra, especially if it's the supernatural. Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the hot fudge, on the Dark Shadows Sunday.
What did you think of? I love Kendrick and Flora's interaction together about Melanie. It's really well done. I mean, Joan Bennett, my God, does she ever do anything wrong on DS? No, but what great chemistry they all had together. But I love their scene here because Melanie literally comes in and is crying by the end of the episode. You need to tell him the truth. And it's a really great ending because it leaves you with another twist.
Sure. The reports I've heard is that the actors really thought that, they were going to get picked up again, for another 13 weeks or whatever. And that the end did come as a little bit of a shock. But I think, they could hear the spray paint can being rattled in terms of putting some writing on the wall. Their ratings aren't exactly what they were at the Barnabas height, and and they had to know that they weren't doing the sorts of stories that really brought the kids, out in droves and so on and so forth. So I would like to think that because of that, uh, they were taking a little extra care and sort of relishing the moment, the acting opportunities, maybe a little bit more.
Do you think I don't know if this happened or not, but do you think if Dan Curtis goes to ABC and says, "Hey, I'm gonna bring Barnabas back as a vampire. It's just not gonna be Jonathan Frid playing him," do you think they would have picked it back up?
No, networks are incredibly unsentimental. And when you have a network head who has an agenda or has another show that he wants to try out in the time slot, they don't care. One of the most oft repeated stories from Hollywood is the way they fire people. You know how you find out you're fired on a show?
No.
You come back from lunch and they're painting over the name on your parking space.
Oh,
You find your things in a box that studio security has boxed up. I don't know if something happened in a studio once and someone was given 2 weeks notice and they just went ape and really did a lot of damage or what, but there is no fired like Hollywood fired.
that is crazy.
Yeah, it has a thumping finality.
What's your favorite moment from this episode?
Oh, the very beginning, the Gabriel Flora stuff.
Yeah.
And Pennick's wonderful performance. The fact that none of that goes the way we expect it to, including him being stabbed to death. He's not dead. So how about you?
I like, God, it's so hard to pick because it's all really great in this episode as well. But I'm gonna go with the interaction between Quentin and Gabriel in the room in the room where they're locked up, because you're expecting Gabriel. Gabriel's got a sling on his arm. There's a bit of a fight in there too. It's not much of one because Gabriel's got a arm in his sling. But I like the interaction because it continues Quentin's credibility as your protagonist.
Yeah.
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 Even though David Selby, he's gonna be gone here probably soon.
He's got movies lined up, he's doing a Barbara Streisand movie. He's David Selby's busy guy.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's gonna be Hollywood star for sure. I mean, the guy got massive talent. Still does. if you haven't seen Todd Tarantula, check it out. It's on Tubi. But this episode just rocks. I mean, complete from start to finish. Like you said, the sequence at the beginning is really good. Christopher Pennock just is amazing. How his range, and I would really, even though we don't. It's weird how when even though Grayson Hall's not in this episode, she's still a presence even though she's gone, because you're sort of looking at Melanie and you're just waiting for Julia to come around the corner and stop her from talking.
Sure.
Which I love. It builds that tension. So I think we've covered everything, buddy. Let me see. I'm trying to think. How is late Sunday night for you?
It's great. Let's
Okay.
do it.
Yeah. So, sorry, I got a podcast. I got a podcast Friday. I got one Saturday. So,
tomorrow we're doing Chinese Big Ben.
Yeah, we're doing The Prisoner, Chimes a Big Bed.
Yeah.
Which I actually, it's funny. I watched the Dark Shadows episode twice today, and then I watched Chimes a Big Bed again.
Chimes Big Ben, you can just watch again and again. What a winner!
I love how they have the overhead shot of the beach when him and the girl are walking across the beach. Really good.
Don't spoil it. Save some for tomorrow.
All right, Patrick. Have a good night, buddy.
Be seeing you.
Bye.